Okay, so let's finish now this part about diffusion flames. I want to do two things now. I want to finish completely the demonstration and to show you the shapes of temperature, fuel mass fraction, oxidizer mass fraction for two simple cases, which are laminar flames. But before doing that, I want to talk about a very important thing, which is basically the main problem for combustion guys today. I want to compare the maximum temperatures in premixed and non-premixed flames for typically a lean flame. So the problem here is very simple. If you're an engineer and you need to burn a certain flux of oxidizer with a certain flux of fuel, you have two ways to do that. The first way is to do a premixed flame. So typically, if you do that, you're going to take stream 2 and stream 1, inject them into a premixer, a place where there is no combustion, with a lot of turbulence, for example. Then you will have a long duct to make sure that everything is mixed, and then you will come into a combustor. So here, you will have mixing only. And here, you will have the flame, the combustion. So for this problem, what I'm going to do is to write equations to find two things. I want to find the outlet temperature here, and I want to find the maximum temperature everywhere in this system. And I'm going to do that for premixed cases. Once I will have done it for premixed, I will do it for diffusion. And I will show you the very important difference between the two systems. So let me start with the premixed case. And let me start by computing T outlet. We assume here that this part is long enough that T outlet is completely homogeneous here. And we assume there are no heat losses. Everything is adiabatic. So we're just going to have a simple case which corresponds to most gas turbines, for example. There are two ways to compute T outlet. We have two methods. I'm going to use the two methods for you because this is typically the kind of things you will have to do when we get to the control part of this course. So the first method, method 1, is using mixing lines. And this is the method I have already shown. So typically, if you use mixing lines here, you're going first to compute the global mixture fraction, which is going to be m.1 divided by m.1 plus m.2. This is the global mixture fraction of your burner. And then you're going to say the temperature here at this point, 1 prime, is going to be T1 prime equals ZG TF naught, where Tf is this temperature and To is this temperature, plus 1 minus Zg To naught. So this is the temperature of the mixture before combustion, so it's the temperature here. And the fuel mass fraction here will be Z global multiplied by Yf naught. This comes directly from the mixing lines. And again, everything I'm going to do here is for lean combustion, so I don't have to care about oxidizer. So this is the state which I've called 1 prime, the state which is here, just before we go into the burner. Then after combustion, and this combustion takes place through a premixed flame, we'll have a temperature here at the outlet, which will be T1 prime plus Q Yf1 prime divided by Cp. And so typically, this will give us what we expect, the Z global Tf naught plus 1 minus Z global To naught plus Q YF0 over Cp Z global. So this is the temperature which will be obtained after combustion here at the outlet. That's one method to do it. There is another method which I'm going to use here to show you actually that we could have obtained everything here in simpler ways. You can write a global balance for enthalpy. We could say here that in a system like this, the enthalpy entering here plus the enthalpy entering here plus the enthalpy due to combustion is equal to the enthalpy going out. Okay, a simple expression under the assumption we have here, Cp equal constant. We have m.1 Cp T YF0, so this is the enthalpy of stream 1 plus the enthalpy of stream 2 so those are the two sensible enthalpies entering the burner. You need to add to that what's burning, and in a lean case you burn all the fuel, so you have m.1 Q YF0. So this is the heat due to combustion. This is the enthalpy now entering the system. It must leave at the outlet, so it has to be equal to m.1 plus m.2 Cp T outlet. So you see that if you just get T outlet from that, you obtain T outlet equal, when you divide here by m.1 plus m.2, the Cp go away, and you obtain the same expression, Z global Tf naught plus 1 minus Z global To naught plus Q YF0 over Cp multiplied by Z global. So you see that working with the mixing line or working with a global balance of enthalpy leads you to the same point. The outlet temperature is just obtained by the mixing temperature plus the heat added by combustion. So this answers my question about T outlet. What about T max? Well, for a premix flame, remember we have said that before, if you travel, for example, along a line here, for a premix flame, you're going to go from cold to hot in a continuous way. So if I draw a line here, X, and I draw the temperature versus X, the temperature will do this thing. We'll have T1 prime here, and we'll go to T outlet. And so the T maximum is equal to T outlet for a flame like this. In other words, it's in a premix flame, the temperature variations are continuous. You go from cold to hot. You don't go above it. You just reach the maximum temperature continuously. No problem. The monotonicity here is ensured by the fact that if it is premixed, you burn at the occurrence ratio you have, and you don't go to any other value of the occurrence ratio. So it's a very simple case, and it has this nice advantage, I will come back to that in a minute, that in a system like this, if it is lean, if you don't have a lot of fuel in the system, if you don't inject a lot of fuel, the temperature will always remain below the maximum temperature which is here. You will never go to very high temperatures. So I will do an example in a few seconds to give you numbers. But let me go now to the second way of burning these things. If you are afraid, and I'm doing an experiment, for example, I can tell you I don't like this system because the premix part is like a bomb, so you don't want students to work on that, so you prefer burning things in a diffusion mode. So in a diffusion mode, you're going to have the same system, but combustion will take place here. So you will still have stream 2 and stream 1. And here you can have a long duct to make sure you have an outlet temperature here. So you see the difference. Up there, I am mixing first, then I'm burning. Here, I will mix and burn at the same time, and I will look at the outlet temperature. So what is T outlet? Well, it's the same as in premixed mode. Well, why is it so? Because the balance is the same. The balance I have written here, if I use the second method here, the global balance for enthalpy, you see that this balance does not care how you burn things. You inject enthalpy here and there, you burn, and at the outlet, you just recover the enthalpy. So the outlet temperature will still be T outlet equals Z global Tf naught plus Y minus Z global To naught plus Q YF0 over Cp Z global. There is no reason, if you have an adiabatic system, to have a different outlet temperature whether you burn in a diffusion or in a premixed mode. The balance of enthalpy is the same. You just recover the chemical energy, so the outlet temperature has to be the same. Now the question is, what is Tmax? Well, this is a diffusion flame. In a diffusion flame, the structure is written up there, okay? And you see in the structure there is a maximum at Z stoichiometric. And there will be a point here, there will be a line here, where Z will be equal to Z stoichiometric. Z does not have a choice. Z is equal to 0 here and to 1 here. So obviously it is a continuous quantity, so somewhere Z will be equal to Z stoichiometric. And at this point, the maximum temperature will be equal to Z stoichiometric Tf naught plus 1 minus Z stoichiometric To naught plus Q YF0 over Cp Z stoichiometric. And this temperature can be much higher than T outlet. For example, if you are globally lean, if you have a small mixture fraction for Zg, Z stoichiometric doesn't care. Z stoichiometric is fixed once for all, and so this number can be much larger than that one. So this temperature will be larger than this one. And we'll do an example in a few seconds. Just note also that Tmax does not depend on M1 or M2. Remember that Z stoichiometric, we computed Z stoichiometric, it was 1 over 1 plus phi. So it was 1 over 1 plus S YF naught over YO naught. So in the system like this, you cannot avoid points which are at the stoichiometry. And at these points, whatever the flow rates are, you will always have the maximum temperature which is written here. You can play games the way you want, except if you stop the flame. That's the only way. But if this flame is burning, at one point, you will have a stoichiometric point, and at this point, the temperature will be very large. You cannot avoid it. So that means now, if I plot, for example, the temperature here, again, on X, and just to mix you up, I'm going to do that on the same plot. This one here. So this is premixed. But for diffusion, the thing will be different. We'll have something like this, and here we'll have something like that, and then we'll go back to the same outlet temperature, but this value here will be Tmax at Z stoichiometric. This value here. You cannot avoid that. And so that's very, very important difference between the two flames. Globally, between inlet and outlet, whether you work with premixed or diffusion, you get the same temperature at the outlet. The problem is, in the meantime, if you're using a diffusion flame, you will have here very high temperatures. So let me also do something for you. Those of you who know Nsight or TechPlot, I'm going to do TechPlot for you. So TechPlot is a software like Nsight actually, which is used to plot isocontours of temperature. In a diffusion flame, the isocontours of temperature will look this way. It will be cold here. It will be cold somewhere here. It will be cold here. But here, you will have along this line a very hot zone of temperature, like this one, which will then be diluted with the rest to reach here a value which will be reaching T outlet. Okay, it will be a mixture of these two values. So you will have here a maximum value of temperature, which is corresponding to Tmax. Before, after mixing, you go down to T outlet. For a premixed flame, things are different. For a premixed flame, everything will be cold here. It's cold everywhere, cold, cold. And here, it will get to the outlet temperature. But not above it, okay? It will just go from this value to this one. It will not jump to another value like we do for diffusion flames. So let me do an example. Suppose, again, we are injecting CH4, pure, so YF0 equal unity, into air, and we take them at 600 K here and 600 K here. And we are going to say, we are going to set up some flow rates here. So the total flow rate here, m.2, will be equal to 8.7 kilograms per second. And the first here will be equal to 0.2 kilograms per second. Those are the typical values you would have. So if you look at the premix case, this one here, you look at the global ZG over that. So ZG is 0.2 divided by 0.2 plus 8.7. And so that's something like 0.022. And if you compute T outlet with these numbers, you find something like 1415 K, which is a low temperature for combustion. Why is it low? Well, it's because we are working on purpose in a lean regime where we don't inject a lot of methane here. And of course, the Tmax is equal to T outlet. But now if you work in a diffusion mode, T outlet will be the same, as I've said before, so you will still get out at 1415 K. But Tmax must be obtained by looking not at Z global, but at Z stoichiometry. And Z stoichiometry here is 1 over 1 plus S YFO divided by YOO, and it's 0.0145. I've shown that a few minutes ago. So you see that instead of computing a maximum temperature with this number, now we need to compute it with this one. And if you do that, Tmax, you find, for this case, 2500 K. If you want to check that at home, I have used here the values of CP, which is 1500, and Q, the heat release, the heat of reaction is the heat of reaction corresponding to methane. So what does it mean? It means that if you're working in a premixed mode, you're going to go from 600 to 1415. You will not go above it. If you're using a diffusion flame, you're going to go to the same outlet temperature, but you will have to go through 2500 K somewhere in your burner. And you could say, well, why do we care? You know, in the end, isn't it sufficient that we get the same outlet temperature here Well, it's true. If you care only about outlet temperature, you're fine. The problem is that, I said that also in the introduction, in the field of combustion, outlet temperatures are not the problem. The problem is different. The problem is pollutant. And there is, in particular, one specific problem with pollution, which is NO. So NO, we call it NOx, which means either NO or NO2. And NO is formed when temperature is large. So you see where things get interesting. NO appears when temperature increases. And the mechanism for that is actually, there is one specific mechanism which is called thermal NO. And the typical rule of thumb that you can use here is that when temperature increases by 50 K, NO will be multiplied by a number of the order of 2 to 4, something like this. So when the temperature increases of 50 K, you make 2 times more NO. And so you see that, unfortunately, even if you come back to the same temperature, if you have created NO at some point, then you have it. And it will not disappear. It's like, you know, when you're cooking, if you prepare a cake, if the cake must be cooked at 200 Kelvin, but you heat it up to 400, then it's burned. You can come back to a lower temperature. If it's burnt, it's burnt. Okay, it's too late. And it's the same for NO. Here, in this zone, you will produce a huge amount of NO, maybe 10 times, 20 times, 100 times more than the premix flame. And so basically you're dead. Okay, you cannot sell your system anymore. If you produce that much NO, it's the end of the story. You cannot work with this system. So you see, the point about diffusion flames is that they help you in certain ways, for safety, for example. But in terms of pollution, every time you add a little bit of diffusion flame somewhere, you increase the pollutants. And so it's a bargain for people who are designing combustion chambers. They want to avoid having too many diffusion flames. How do you do that? Well, you need to mix faster. And I'll come back to what I've said in the introduction. Mixing fast is a way to reduce these things. Okay? If you mix fast, then you burn as a premixed flame, and then you can avoid having these problems. Now, I want to rephrase that in a different way again, because that's a very central result today in most companies, to say the following. So, in a premixed flame, the maximum temperature depends on phi g, the global equivalence ratio, or Zg, the global mixture fraction. And how does it depend on that? I've shown you this curve, and when we talked about the premixed flames, when we were discussing flammability limits, it's changing like this. Here, if you put the equivalence ratio, global, here you have 1, and the temperature for a premixed flame is like this one. This is the maximum temperature in a premixed flame. Of course, if you have a stoichiometric premixed flame, you have a very hot burned gases. But if you have a lean premixed flame, you have a low Tmax. Now, in a diffusion flame, the maximum temperature is fixed by YF0 and YO0. These two numbers gives you this stoichiometric, which is equal to 1 over 1 plus SYF naught to YO naught. And you cannot play with it. It's fixed. It does not even depend on the flow rates. You cannot choose it. And this maximum temperature, this is something probably you should see by now. This temperature, this maximum temperature, this temperature is equal to the maximum temperature in a stoichiometric premix flame. In other words, this value which is here on this curve is equal to the Tmax which is up there for the diffusion flame. And in all diffusion flames, whatever you do, you will always reach this maximum value, while in a premix flame, you reach it only at stoichiometry, which is a very important difference. So this controls a lot of what we do today. You see, the problem is that we cannot operate things in the premixed mode, but still, we would like to mix as fast as possible, because otherwise, we get a big problem by pollutants. Okay. Having said that, I still haven't solved the problem. So I'm going to do it now in a few cases. This will also allows me to analyze a little bit more the structure of those flames. We will begin by two simple cases, which will allow me also to tell you a bit more about the structure of those flames. The first thing to realize is that you remember I told you that we were looking for canonical premix flames. What are the canonical diffusion flames? Well, is there such a thing as a laminar steady diffusion flame, for example? If you think about it, it's you take fuel here, and you take oxidizer here, and you start a flame. It's not a very smart way to do combustion. Like just to take a similarity, about, let's take, for example, suppose you are producing bicycles, you see? When you produce bicycles in a premixed mode, it means you take a frame and a wheel. Well, probably you need two wheels, would be better. You mix them, that means you put them in the same place, and then you eject them, and it gives you a bike. It's a good way to do a plant, okay? You have frame and wheels coming here, you put them together, it's like mixing, and then when you assemble them, you get the bike. If you do that in a diffusion mode, this is not what people would do. You would have people bringing the frame from this side, and other people bringing the wheels on the other side. And you don't mix them, you do the bike here. So now you have a problem, is that you get all these bikes accumulating here. So it's getting crowded here. So you need someone to take the bikes and bring them out. Otherwise, this system will not work, okay? There will be just too many things accumulating here. So if you come back now to the world of combustion, what I'm saying is that you're bringing fuel here, you're bringing oxidizer from this side, so you're going to have a lot of products here. Where are these things going? in a premix flame, we had a flow here, a flame front, and things were pushed away from the flame front. In a diffusion flame, these products, they are there, they are stuck there. There's not much you can do about it. So this means really that you have two situations. The first one is a case where the flow is really 1D. And it's, in this case, what will happen is that in a pure 1D, this will be one-dimensional diffusion flame. This flame will have to be unsteady. Why will it be unsteady? Because you are going to have all these products accumulating over time here. And so the zone where products are formed is going to grow and grow and grow, and you will never have a steady state. We can find a solution for this problem. I'm going to do it in a minute. But it's, of course, it's not a steady simulation like we had, for example, for premixed flames. So there is a second way to do that, which is also a one-dimensional, but I will put that like this because it's not really one-dimensional. Strained flame. So what is strain? I haven't talked really about strain. I've talked about curvature and stretch. Strain is a method to do flames. So typically what you do in a strained flame, you inject fuel here, for example with a jet. You put simply a tube like this, and on the other side you put another tube when you inject the oxidizer, like this, and they blow against each other. And you will have a diffusion flame here. Now the nice thing about this situation is that if you do that, the products will be able to leave that way. And this way. And in this case, if you strain the flame, you will be able to have a one-dimensional strained flame which is steady. So let me first show you how these flames look like. I haven't done that yet. This is an example. This is a full computation with chemistry and everything. And you can see here the distance. That means this axis is equal to this one. And you can see the profiles of different things. For example, here you have the profile of the fuel. And here you have the profile of the oxidizer. And now, today you are professional and experts in diffusion flame. You recognize here that the stoichiometric point must lie somewhere around this point. Okay? This is where the flame is sitting. And here you have the temperature profile. You see the temperature profile in a diffusion flame is very different of the temperature profile in a premix flame. In a premix flame, we were going from cold to hot. Here we are cold on both sides, and in the middle, we have the hot zone. Okay? So again, the problem is that with this hot zone, these hot gases have to go somewhere. And this is a major problem now for us. We need to model that. This is also why these flames are not very efficient. They have a problem to evacuate the burned gases. So let me summarize what I'm going to do now. I have told you that we have this structure, T of Z, YF of Z, YO of Z. This is what we call the flame structure in Z space. But I need Z of space and time if I want to have the complete solution, which is I want to have temperature and fuel mass fraction, etc., versus space and time. So this I have done. This I want to do now, and I want to do it for these two flames, the one-dimensional diffusion flame and the one-dimensional strain flame. So let me start by the diffusion flame without strain. So this is a strange animal. It would be difficult to do actually in the real world because it's kind of a mathematical toy here. So the problem would be the following. We would have fuel here, an oxidizer here. This would be the space. And at t equals 0, just at the beginning, I assume I have a wall here, and suddenly I take the wall off, and these two things start burning. That means I need to ignite them too, okay? So at t equals 0, I just start by a step function. That means z, this is z at the initial time. And as I've said, unfortunately, we're going to have to solve for this problem as a time-dependent problem. Now, those of you who know the equation we're going to solve, which is this one, know that there are solutions for that. This is the equation. This is the initial solution. And we still have the two boundary conditions. Z at minus infinity is equal to 1, and z at plus infinity is equal to 0. I'm not going to do the general solution for that. I want to do a simple case. I want to do a case where there is negligible heat release, so that I can say that the density is constant. The extension is straightforward, just takes 2 hours instead of 2 minutes. And if the density is constant, I can also assume that the velocity is 0, because the flow basically doesn't play a role on the flame structure. So U is equal also to 0. At least I can sit in the flame reference frame, and in this case, I have no velocity. So you see that if density is like this, the only equation we need to solve is this one. It's dz dt equal d Laplacian of z. Okay, this equation becomes this one. And in 1D, that means d to z over dx squared. Simple enough. You've solved this equation before. This is like the heat equation. I'm not going to ask here who remembers how to do that. A simple way to do that is to change variables, to use eta equal to x over 2 square root of dt. And you replace it in the equation. So this means that the partial derivative of these new variables versus time is minus eta over 2t. You just differentiate this equation. And the partial derivative of eta versus x is 1 over 2 square root of dt. So you replace these two things in this equation, and you end up with a very simple equation, which is why I'm doing it. You end up with z second plus 2 eta z prime equals 0. It's very similar, actually, to the boundary layer equations also. So if you have an equation, z now is only a function of eta, this variable which is here. And you can integrate it, okay? So it leads to z second divided by z prime equal minus 2 eta, probably. Huh? So z prime is equal to a constant exponential minus eta squared. And z is the integral of this quantity. So it's a integral of 0 to eta exponential minus x2 dx plus b. So you know that this function, the integral of exponential minus x2, is called the F function. It's something which is tabulated and well known. It's f of eta equal 2 over square root of pi integral of 0 to eta exponential minus x2 dx. So you can change that in z. You apply the two boundary conditions which are here. You apply the initial condition which is here. And you end up with a classical solution which is the following. Z equal 1/2 of 1 minus f of x over 2 square root of dt. not very sophisticated differential equation. You can do that at home. You see now that what this means is that in this problem now, I have completely solved the equations. I know Z as a function of space and time, and since I know the flame structure, I can find T now, the fuel mass fraction and the oxidizer mass fraction. You see there's a funny thing here. This thing depends on time, okay? The structure at a given time will change, and what is important is x divided by the square root of dt. So let me show you how this thing looks. For, again, a simple flame. So this is the flame structure. Again, this is for methane, air. You recognize here the stoichiometric mass fraction. Here you have the curve for the oxidizer mass fraction. And here you have the curve for the fuel mass fraction. And here you have the temperature. Okay? This is a case where one side is preheated, so you have the maximum temperature at stoichiometric value, and you have this. So this is the flame structure. Now, if you combine that with the equation for Z, this is what you obtain. At a given instant in time, you fix the instant in time, you have a certain value for eta. So you plot this function 1 minus f of x divided by a constant, and you obtain this green curve here. Okay? If you have this value of Z and you have the previous curve, you can construct all the fields. So for example, here you have the oxidizer mass fraction now, the fuel mass fraction, and you can see, of course, that there is no overlap here, and here you have the temperature. Now, this is in physical space, okay? It's not in the Z space. You see here, you go to the maximum temperature at Z stoichiometric, and you see how these two curves look like, and this is exactly like they would look like in the real space. Okay, this is like X. It's really it's not in space, and it's not in Z space. It's in real space now. And this procedure, which I've done here in a very simple case, is the one we do all the time. Except, in most cases, that the solution of this equation is not always as simple as here, okay? I've done it here for simplicity. I'm going to do another example. But in a three-dimensional case, you will need a code to find Z as a function of space and time. Only in this case, it is simpler. There's one thing I want to do also at this point is talk about reaction rates. So let me first here just mention something here. The flame here in this example, the flame is located at a point xf, which is such that Z stoichiometry equal 1/2 of 1 minus f xf over 2 square root of dt. Okay, you just invert this relation, and this will tell you where the flame is. It will give you the abscissa, except for 0 here initially, and if you invert that, you will find where the flame will be. Doesn't really mean the flame has a speed, okay? It's this value doesn't move a lot. The flame remains almost where it is. So what is the reaction rate? This is my next point. Well, that's an interesting question. We have said that chemistry was infinitely fast. Does that mean that the reaction rate is infinite? Well, certainly not. Obviously, we are not burning all the fuel in the world in this flame. So the reaction rate, we have to talk about the integrated reaction rate. So let's make a zoom on this flame here. This is the flame position given by this expression at a given instant in time. And this is typically the fuel profile, YF of x. So it is 0 here on the lean side, and it's the other expression we gave before on the rich side. Let me integrate now between xf minus and xf plus here. We know that this point is singular here. The reaction rate here is a singular function, but as you will see, it has a finite integral value, fortunately. So how do we do that? Well, we write the equation for the fuel, and now I will have to come back to values which have reaction rates. So it's rho d grad of yf plus omega dot f. If I integrate this relation on this domain here, I find something simple, which is integral of xf minus to xf plus rho yf dx plus rho u yf in xf minus and xf plus equal rho d grad of yf. And here you will see the picture is very different of, we've done this exercise for premixed flames, and here the thing is quite different. This quantity here we will call the integrated reaction rate. This is the total reaction rate. This is actually the amount of fuel burnt per second. Okay, now, of course, you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have xf minus go to xf plus now. When I do that, this is the integral of a continuous quantity, so this thing goes to 0. If xf1 go to xf2 plus goes to xf minus goes to xf plus here, so this thing goes to 0. This thing also, rho u yf goes to 0 because it's a continuous quantity. Now, if you look at the gradients here, on this side, the gradient is discontinuous compared to this side. So the gradient on the right side is 0. There is no fuel. But there is a gradient on the left side. So here it will be 0 minus rho d dyf over dx on the left plus omega f. So in the end, what we find is that omega f is nothing else than rho d dyf dx on the left side. So what this really tells you, and this is very, very different from the premix case, is that the fuel which burns is equal to the fuel which diffuses to the flame. Because you see, this is like a flux, right? So except it's a diffusive flux. If we would plug it as diffusion velocities, here we would have the diffusion velocities. And so you remember when we did the same expression for premixed flames, we had something depending on the diffusion and on the reaction. Here, what this really tells us is that the amount of fuel that you can hope to burn in your system is controlled completely by diffusion. This is why we call it a diffusion flame. Because in the end, for combustion people, we want to know how much fuel we are burning every second. We saw how this was fixed in a premixed flame. It was fixed by the flame speed. But here in a diffusion flame, it's really fixed by the diffusion fluxes. Of course, this is true only in the infinitely fast chemistry limit, but it's also very true in many other cases. I will show example in a second. The way you have to imagine that, the way to think about this result and about infinitely fast chemistry is to realize that in a diffusion flame, even if chemistry is infinitely fast, it's only burning what it can. What do I mean by that? Suppose I am the flame here, and you guys here are the fuel, and you are the oxidizer. If I burn things very fast, it means that every time I get one of you and one of you, I put them together and poof, they are burnt. Okay? Does that mean that everything is going to burn fast? No. I'm going to burn things as fast as you bring them to me. If you are very slow on that side by diffusion to bring me new fuel, on this side to bring me new oxidizer, then the fuel flow rate consumption will be less. In other words, I can burn only what you bring me. Even if I am very fast, I burn only what diffuses towards me. And this is what this equation tells you. In the end, the amount of fuel which burns is controlled by the diffusion flux. In an expression like this one, and in this specific example here, you can go further, you can rewrite this expression. Because you have the expression of the Y fuel versus X. So for example here, the integrated reaction rate, omega dot F, you can write it rho d dyf divided by dz multiplied by dz divided by dx. Z, you know what it is? It's this expression. And dyf divided by dz given by the flame structure, it's just a straight line. So you know it too. You can replace all these expressions here and you find omega f equal to minus rho yf0. So if you have more fuel, you burn more, that's nice. Divided by 2, 1 minus z stoichiometric. Square root of d over pi t, and the time is here, exponential minus eta f square, where this is the flame position. It's not a complicated exercise again. I'm sure you can manage that. And so you see that omega f is going down with time. Time is here. So this flame is actually, we call it choking. When you start it from this step function, it's going to burn strongly because you bring a lot of fuel to it. As time goes by, the initial Z profile looks like this, and as time goes by, the Z profile looks like this, and then like that. So the fluxes are less and less, and the reaction rate goes down. So this flame is actually going to burn less and less. This is what you see actually if you look at a fire. The flame that you see up there, they're almost not burning anymore because they cannot receive air from the outside. The air is too far away, the diffusive fluxes are very small, and so combustion stops. So it's not a good way to burn things, obviously. Okay, you don't want to burn things in this way. This is why we're going to do a second example now, which is the strained diffusion flame. So the strained diffusion, I call it pseudo 1D flame. It is 1D for the field of Z, but it is 2D for the field of velocity. So let me show you why. The configuration here is the following. We take fuel and we throw it against oxidizer. Again, I'm going to suppose that rho equal constant to make it simple for you. You can do a PhD on this topic. It's a classical exercise, but it's much faster to do it at constant density. So you see these two flows. They go like this, and then they have to go like that. There is a simple solution to this problem. If I call this here the axis x and y, is that the velocity u is equal to minus ax and v is equal to ay. So basically, what you have here is that on this side, there is a strong velocity going that way. The velocity goes to 0 here, and on the other side, it's the other way. So this is an exact solution to this problem, and A is what we call the strain rate. And it's a number in seconds minus 1. So the more you blow here, the more you blow on that side or on that side, the more you increase A. So if you have this solution here, it's a 2D solution, okay? So we need to plug it into our equation for Z. So let me write the equation for Z now. This is the equation we need to solve. As I said, this problem will have a steady solution. So we need to solve this equation now. Now, this is a place where you want to be a bit slow. This is 0 because Z is a function which depends only on x. Z is a function like this one, or like this one. It has no dependence in y. But U and V depends on x and y. So the way to do that is you combine these two terms here to write it as rho U dz dx plus rho V dz dy plus Z d over dx of rho U plus d over dy of rho V equal d over dx of rho d dz dx. And this is 0 because of continuity. And this is 0 because Z does not depend on y. So you are left with a very simple equation, which is U dz dx, if you assume density to be constant, equal d and in this case U is equal to minus ax dz dx just have to solve that. Well, it's the same game I've done before. For an equation like this, you can show that it's enough to do a simple change of variable, which is psi equal to x divided by square root of 2d over a. You plug that here. I'm not going to do it. If you can do the first one, you can do the second one. And the solution is this one. Z equal 1/2 of 1 minus of f of x divided by 2 square of d over a. So it's very close to what I had here. If you look at that, actually, you see that if you replace a by 1 over time, it's exactly the same solution. Except that this one is a steady solution for a given strain rate. This gives you the Z shape, and so if you have the Z shape, then you can have the temperature, the fuel mass fraction, the oxidizer mass fraction. Now on this expression, I can do the same integral I've done here to find the integral of the reaction rate in this case. Again, it's a simple exercise. You can do that at home. So it's minus rho yf0 divided by 1 minus z stoichiometric square root of AD divided by 2 pi exponential minus psi f squared. You recognize the same ingredients I had before. So you see here another very important results for diffusion flames. Those are all constants. This is the diffusivity, and this is the strain. So you see that omega f changes like square root of A. So when strain goes up, omega f goes up. Well, most of you know that. If you have a fire at home, you know, with wood, you know that the fire will burn better if you blow on it. Psst, psst, psst. Why? Well, because when you blow on a fire, you're doing exactly that. You are pushing more oxidizer towards the flame, so you are increasing the gradients, so you are increasing the total reaction rate. Okay, so that's in the end, when you are trying to start a fire with wood, you are doing strain diffusion flames. Why? Because in your piece of wood, the combustible gases go out and the air comes from the outside. So when you blow here, you add the velocity, you increase the gradients, and you get more combustion. So what the theory is telling us here is that for a diffusion flame, it's very good to blow on it if you want it to burn more. And you will see in a minute that this relation is actually quite good, that the measurements in the real world confirm that. So I'm not going to do the solution, of course. I cannot do the solution of the diffusion flame problems in all cases. In general, if you tomorrow have to work on a flame like this, you will have to solve on your own this equation. And you will have to set up this boundary condition for the fuel and this one for the oxidizer. And you can do that for laminar cases, turbulent cases. Usually, if it's a 3D problem, you will have to solve this equation in 3D. But this is much easier than solving for the full equations of combustion that we had at the beginning. Okay? This thing is much easier. So this is the procedure that you will find in actually most codes. Even in complex CFD codes, people will just do that. They will just work with this equation, this boundary condition, and use a flame structure assumption. Now, the flame structure assumption I've shown you is the simplest one, the infinitely fast chemistry. You can refine that. You can do things a little bit more subtle than infinitely fast chemistry. But the procedure remains really the same. The idea here, in most cases, is that we use the flame structure, we solve this equation, and we find the complete solution like I've done here. So is this good? Is this precise? Well, you can look, for example, at curves like this one. This is a full chemistry. So again, there is no simplification when I show that it's computed without any assumption. And this is the plot of omega F, the total heat release or the total integrated reaction rate, versus strain rate. And you see that when you increase strain rate, the shape which you have here looks almost like a square root of A. So this is really something very close to this expression. Is this always true? Well, same thing. You know that if you have blown on a fire, you know that it helps to blow on a fire. But if you blow too much, then you're going to kill the flame again. So this curve here stops at some point here, which is called the quenching strain rate. Let me just explain that. If you look at this prototype here of the strain diffusion flame, and you put here the strain A, you have a curve like this one, which would be the theory, which would be exactly this curve. And when you do experiments, or when you do simulations, you find that the real world works pretty well up to a certain point here. And then, if you start blowing too fast on this flame, at some point the flame starts thinking it's not infinitely fast anymore. Remember the example I gave you a few minutes ago. If I am here and I believe I'm very fast because I can take fuel and oxidizer and burn them fast, and then you start bringing fuel faster and oxidizer faster, I can still do it, and then you keep increasing things even faster, at some point I will realize I'm not that fast anymore. And if I'm not that fast anymore, I will start limiting the speed at which combustion takes place. And this is what happens here. I start burning less than the theory is saying for infinitely fast chemistry. And then things can get even worse. If you start bringing me things even much, much faster, and I cannot burn them anymore, at some point I will just stop. The temperature will go down, and the flame will completely quench. And this is what's happening here. Here we have the quenching strain rate. And here, of course, you cannot say anything about this zone here, or even about quenching strain rate, with the theory I gave you. If you want to do that, there are match asymptotics expansion. Again, we can do that. It's not going to take 2 minutes, it's going to take 2 months or 2 years. But still, the theory works very well here. So at low strain, we can really say that chemistry is indeed fast. And in many cases, when you look at the literature, you will find out that in most CFD codes, people work with flame structures which are almost corresponding to infinity fast chemistry. It's just a very simple way to do that. Okay, let me conclude now by backing up a little bit. And here you have the list of assumptions which I had to use to go here, okay? Infinity fast chemistry, single step, no heat loss, low Mach, Lewis equal unity, and all the diffusion of coefficients of the species are equal. In a real flame, this is not always true. What is the worst assumption here? Well, actually, these two assumptions here are not really satisfied in practice. If you look at hydrogen, for example, hydrogen will have a Lewis number of 0.3. So 0.3 starts to be a little bit small to say it's equal to unity, okay? So the factor of 3 gets to be large. So we need extensions of the notion of a mixture fraction. Here I have defined mixture fraction saying it was, remember, S time YF minus YO. But this definition will not work in practice. And in the combustion community, there are big discussions on what do you do if you know that the Lewis numbers are not unity to define a mixture fraction. Well, the first thing that people do is they start saying we can construct other mixture fractions. And one way to do that is to work with elements. What do we mean by elements here? Well, typically, for example, carbon atoms or oxygen atoms. If we try to construct something which is conserved, we could look also at other things that the scalars I have used here. For example, if you look at CH4 plus 2O2 gives CO2 plus 2H2O. If you think of this equation, you see something which is conserved, obviously, which has to be conserved, it's carbon. The carbon atoms, either they are in CH4 or they are in CO2, but they have to be conserved again. So what people do is they define, for example, a new quantity, which is YCO2 plus YCH4. And this is a passive scalar based on elements. And now if you define a Z, which is based on YC minus YC in the oxidizer divided by YC in the fuel minus YC in the oxidizer, you have another mixture fraction. Which is sometimes better than the one I have used. Except if you think a little bit about it, you will see that this is true only if CH4 and CO2 diffuse also in the same way. So when you will go now from this world, what I've shown you today is basically the baseline theory. If you want to go one step further, and you want to try to refine this theory, then things will get much more complicated rapidly. As I said, in 90% of the cases, especially if you're doing CFD, you will find out that most of the codes are based only on this approach or a very simple modification of this approach, and that should be enough for what you need to do in the future. Okay, this is all I wanted to do on diffusion flame, then that will be the end of this course.